share. So that should be there. That's recording now.
Super.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. There you go. Well, appreciate you coming today. I just wanted to introduce you to the Institute for Smarter Government and this project that we've been working on for a few years.
Okay.
And it's really about trying to find ways to use data analytics to start to look at solutions upstream. And so this story today really started with a TED Talk back in 2016.
Wonderful.
And yeah, so they asked me to do this TED Talk, and of course you've got about 18 minutes to do this conversation.
Yeah.
So what we started to look at was, I started with a story that said that talked about a village. There are, nice river coming through the stream. There's people now down at the stream, doing some washing, and suddenly there's a baby that goes floating by. So the village gets a little bit anxious, pulls the baby out of the water, says, wow, that was a miracle. We saved one.
Okay.
Only to discover that there's 3, 4, 5, 6 more coming down the stream. And so the 1 or 2 people that are down there said, this is crazy. We can't do all of this ourselves. We need more people. So eventually you've got most of the village down at the stream pulling these babies out of the water. And someone asks, why are these kids coming down the stream? It's like, well, we'd love to help you out, but we're so busy pulling these kids out. We don't have time to figure that out. We just really have to pay attention, spend time pulling these kids out of the water. And so 3 people leave out of the 100 and go upstream, only to discover that the dam is broke, and there's a flood. It's wiped out another village, and anyone that could run ran up the hill. Anybody that was left down in the village, which of course are the smaller kids and elderly, they get washed down the river, and that's what's happening. So it's sort of a short story that says, typically within a community, we spend a lot of time looking at reactive solutions to a problem that's in front of us, when this is could be perhaps better dealt with upstream with a more proactive approach. And so this Opioid Summit ONE is an attempt to start to look for solutions that are upstream using data analytics, so that we don't spend as much time pulling kids out of the river or people off the street that have fallen down.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So when you analogy, look at, I like that.
Yeah. So when you look at, it helps people understand a little bit more sort of what's happening out on the street. If you look at human services, and this is back in 2016, this didn't even have a name. It's now called the social determinants of health. There are now people that would say human services, which includes social service, health, education, and justice, all play a role in providing support for people within a community. And we typically, for an opioid crisis, you'll see that there is a lot of attention on ambulance or paramedics, healthcare workers, police, fire, and those are sort of the folks that grab the headlines. What you don't see are some of the other people that are perhaps involved: social, health, education, and justice, working together as a team. We know right now that if we looked at some of the things that are in a community, hospitals, as an example, serve about 20% of all the health issues, and social service or human services, which would include social, education, justice, and some health, serve the other 80%. So it's actually a relatively small percentage of health issues, emergency ones primarily, are being served by the hospital, but it's really not the primary caregiver or the person that helps provide better health for the community. It's really this network of social, health, education, and justice. They all work somewhat together. So if you ask any one of these organizations, how's it going? They will tell you independently, as not as a team, but as a silo. Well, it's obvious to deal with problems like this, we need more money for social workers. Or if you asked health, they would say, well, it's obvious we need more money for another ambulance, or we need more money for a bigger hospital, more sophisticated equipment. Education says, no, we need more teachers. We need, justice will say we need more police officers on the street. And so everyone's sort of looking at this in a transactional way. How many things do we need to help resolve this problem? And so independently, if that's how you wanted to look at this, that would be actually quite true. But communities don't work that way. These social determinants of health are actually looked at somewhat differently. When you look at the US as an example, they spend a lot of money on social services or human services. The total budget is around $1.9 trillion.
Wow.
So it's a trillion with a T. Most people, if you ask the US, you'd say, well, they spend a lot of money on defense, and that tends to get a lot of headline news. But what you don't realize is that, for the 600 and whatever billion dollars they spend in defense, they're spending a lot more, like $880 billion in social services, $930 billion in health, and 73 billion in education, and 28 billion in justice. So those four things that we call human services actually collectively represent an incredible amount of money that's spent every year in any government, not just the US, but in any government worldwide. It's not a small portion of funding that we spend money on and invest in each community. The problem is we're trying to figure out, any government's trying to figure out, how can we do more with less? So you look at we just went through a federal election this year. Every party is trying to say, well, we need to work smarter. We need to get better programs, but we need to be fiscally, responsible. And looking forward, we don't want to have these generational debts. So is there a way that I can spend less and actually do more? And that's a hard thing to say, but it's what any government would want to hear. Is there a way that we can ask our collective human service organizations to do more with less? And the answer is yes, there is a way to do that. If you look at health, education, social injustice independently, it costs a lot of money to have to support each one of these organizations. And that model works well as long as we have lots of money. As soon as the money starts to get tighter, then we start to have this conversation that's more around, if we have less money, who's going to lose and who's going to win? And if I flip this, it's a very transactional model. If I flip this upside down and look at it from the other perspective and look at it from the client side, you start to see a very different picture. And this is something that I have a lot of personal experience in, working at Athena Software for the last 19 years. We've got social service or human service type organizations worldwide. And it's incredible to see the amount of overlap or the amount of work that each agency does that perhaps is being supported by or worked with on a slightly different level from a different department. So if I look at this from a client side, I may be already working with somebody in social services, somebody in the health sector, I'm involved in somebody in the school, and I'm involved in the justice program as well. So there's perhaps 4 of these different organizations all working independently. But when I look at it from the client side, it's like, yep, that's me. I'm
Right.
The one that's now having to deal with all 4 of them.
Yeah, you have to deal with four of them, and then rather than one entity. It's
right.
It's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work. It's super expensive. It's somewhat confusing, and it's not always efficient. And so this transactional model that sort of rewards people for getting busy is being replaced by one that says, I know that you're busy, but are you making a difference? So this is where this idea of getting assessments or asking governments will ask a provider, I know you're busy, but I'd love to know, are we making a difference? Can you just tell me where we are before we started with this client, where we were during the treatment, and then where we are afterwards? And it's this idea of being able to say, I'd like to suggest there's a transformational process that we can look at that says, every year the budgets just can't keep going up to follow or to track a crisis like the opioid crisis. It's the numbers they're not linear, they're exponential. And if we continue to just sort of let this thing run and just pulling kids out of the river, being sort of reactive, it will break the back on our healthcare system. It will break it.
Certainly.
The numbers that you need to, that if you follow the traditional model, it will continue to track in a way that our current system cannot follow. And so there is a moment coming, and you're starting to see that crystallized in a couple of things that are happening down in the States, and then we'll follow here in Canada, where somebody's now saying, I've actually done a study and I'm now starting to see what this has cost us. I would like to know who's responsible. And I would ask them for their assistance in helping us to now fix this. And so there's this transformational moment that's coming that requires clarity. The tough part is people like the Minister of Finance, Minister of Social Services, Health, Justice, they don't have visibility on some of the demographic detail and the outcomes. They're having trouble sort of seeing beyond the noise of people that are in front of them saying, well, it's obvious, we need more money for social, more money for health, education, and justice. It's just like, it's a parade of one group after another lobbying for more funds. And what really needs to happen is to say, I recognize that everybody's plays an active role in this and that everyone requires additional funding, but is there perhaps a better way that we can do this? Now, it's interesting, the province of New Brunswick actually researched their 10 top clients. So these are the people that cost them the most in the province. And so it's an attempt to try and look at this from a client side, not just sort of looking at it, well, the hospital needs more money.
Indeed.
The Premier actually said, well, let's look at this from the client side and say, how much does it cost for us to serve one client? And it turns out they had one person there that was costing them over $1 million a year.
Wow.
$1 million. Yeah, it's a lot of money. And
Sure.
So you have to ask yourself, is there not a better way that we can serve this one person that doesn't cost us $1 million a year if we start to work collectively together as a team? So the answer was yes. It was actually cheaper and more effective for the province to be able to say, I'm going to assign you a personal nurse or a private nurse. It costs a fraction of what it was costing this series of events that says, well, you roll from healthcare and then perhaps over to social services and then back into justice. You're not doing well in school, and around you go. It's sort of a never-ending cycle, and every time you swing through, it costs another $20,000. It's perhaps easier to just say, you know what, I'm keeping a closer eye on you, and perhaps there's some things that we can do proactively so it doesn't keep occurring.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is where I'm super excited for the students at the school, because they're arriving in a community that is, as you can see on the screen here, there are a lot of different human service organizations that work hard to provide value to the community, and every community has a little bit of this. It's not unusual to have in one community, and it doesn't really matter how big you are, maybe 100 of these different organizations that are trying to help in one way or another. A lot of them are nonprofit, supported by volunteers, but they all somewhat overlap, and it's a difficult thing to manage. As an example, if some people were saying, well, how would this actually work? If I looked at, we use Brad as an example. He's a high school student. He's having some trouble at school. He's already seeing a social worker. He's got some issues with some of the staff at the school. He's perhaps taking some of that frustration that he's got at home. He's getting into a fight. the school says, well, that's it, you're expelled. He goes home. There's another fight at the house. The family goes, well, the parents said that I can't handle this. This is crazy. You're destroying the place. They phone the police. They come, the kids, somebody's got a broken arm. And so paramedics are called in, and perhaps it's called it's classified as domestic violence, or some other kind of issue that's called at the house. As soon as you kind of go through that short scenario, within 6 or 7 hours, you could have about 28 of these different services arrive at your doorstep. Like, you flip the switch for 28 of these to arrive, and they're now activated in each one of their different silos, trying to help this one person. So you can see it's incredibly complex. And from the user side, it looks extremely busy. But here's some good news. If you just look at the transactional part of this series of events, it looks like there are a bunch of separate points within each one of these different sectors. When in fact, if you look at it from the other side, that's now considering the data, and you're now considering that data is now demonstrating there's a pattern. It's like, oh, so actually I can now start to look at this big data set over a larger period of time, and I'm now starting to see predictive analytic trends and patterns that now starts to suggest that actually we've seen this before. Some things are starting to reoccur, and why is that? And is there a way that I can perhaps use predictive or prescriptive analytics to be able to look at this series of connectors that occur over a period of time? And let's call that a transformational strategic objective that says we're not just trying to solve for one, but I'm trying to solve for the future. And I'm maybe not just solving for one person. I'm now trying to create a model that is better at identifying and helping out a larger group of people. And so this is where we start to say, in the human service sector that spends absolutely the most money of all departments within the country, you're collecting data in each one of these departments.
Certainly.
If there was a way that you could start to look at some of the data, and I know that there's rules that says confidentiality, security, privacy, we can't share. Yeah, we can't share it all, but we have some. And with some, it's enough to be able to start to create predictive and prescriptive analytic engines that will help communities do more with less.
Indeed.
That would be true. And there's the promise for our future in the country. For the students that are currently enrolled today in your program, when they graduate, these are the kinds of opportunities that that are sitting beside them.
Sure.
Because today, if I looked at how much money do we spend on being proactive, it's around 3%. And how much do we spend to get another ambulance and 3 shifts? Or how many, for more police, for more social workers, to just kind of deliver the reactive transactional services, it's 97%. And so this is the 100 people that in the village that we're asked to help out. 97 of them are at the river. 3% went upstream.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. It's so the students in your class, people that are enrolled in this program, are part of that proactive transformational group, that smaller wedge, that are actually going to be able to determine what do we do next to be able to get better results for less.
Right. Yeah.
So this could be, as an example, this could be where Brad, that same student, was identified at age 4 that said, actually, I see some learning disabilities. Perhaps there's something that we could help out in grade 1 that would make it easier for Brad to learn to do better in school and start playing sports, and perhaps doesn't have the same kind of issues downstream.
Totally makes sense. Yeah. And the interesting thing is that these systems would probably say the proactive would cause them more liability problems.
Yep.
Whereas if they
Yeah,
react to things, they say, "Well, we did it. We did what we're supposed to do." And it would be really interesting to see the proactive.
right. Well, for sure, the reactive or transactional approach, it rewards those people that are busy.
Right.
And so if you can demonstrate that, we're maxed out, we have no room, the wait times are getting longer, we don't have any more ambulances. I've talked to
Indeed.
organizations here in our region where, if you call 911,
Hmm.
um, there are points in the day or during the week where we don't have all of the ambulances are busy. So we're now pulling from other smaller communities to assist us here in our region. And which means you're now having to make a choice when somebody says we're in big trouble. It's getting harder to serve those constituents that got a mandate to help protect. That's a tough place to be. um, so finding ways to become more proactive are important. Using big data makes it easier to be more accurate and actually help share knowledge with people using the data that they probably already own.
Mm, yeah, for sure. And they do have a lot
So,
of it. I do know that. That's they're still trying to get around their privacy challenges.
yep,
And we work very closely with the hospital next door to the college, and one of their biggest problems, even with us, is that they have to have someone on site or students on site to work with them. It's been a fascinating process, and I'm work directly with the CEO there. But even with that, her reach only goes so far.
right.
Yeah,
Yep,
yeah,
yeah, exactly. Well, I've got some interesting things to share with you because we found ways
certainly.
to work through
Great,
some of that.
amazing.
As a result of that TED talk, um, I had within 24 hours a phone call from Microsoft Worldwide that said, "I'd like to help you build this. Um, what do you need?" And
Wow,
I thought, okay, look what we started now.
sure.
So we created the Institute for Smarter Government
Hmm.
as a nonprofit to help evangelize the use of bigger data to help do better things for less. And so the next question after we started doing this is when we started asking communities, so what kind of complex problems do you have? Every community's got complex problems. Not all of them have big data, and there's a lot of variety to choose from. So rather than just sort of starting with everything and doing really nothing of any consequence, I thought it best to maybe focus on at one crisis at a time and take a small group of people and actually demonstrate what's possible. And so this is where we asked our community, what can we do? How can we do a better job using less with what we have? And so this is where we took the idea of working with big data and said, let's apply it to the opioid crisis.
Sure.
Um, so the opioid crisis back in 2016 was big, but it wasn't as big as it is today. And if you look at the news, it's besides the election or some politics, it's not far behind. It'll either be number 1, 2, or 3, but it's usually hovering right around the top of the page. And it affects every community across Canada. So I thought this would be a good place for us to start, because you really can't say no, it isn't important, and you can't say no, I don't really care, because it's affecting pretty much everybody. So if there was a way that we could take big data and apply it to one problem, the opioid crisis was probably a great place to start.
Yes,
And
indeed.
so this is where, when I said back in 2016, this is an opportunity for us to demonstrate to not just our community, but to the rest of the world. This is how a country can now start to take data, create knowledge, and do better things for less, and become smart. So it's not just the smart community anymore. It's
Hmm.
a smart country, and it's learning from each other using big data and analytics on how to solve complex problems that change within each community.
Hmm.
And so that was the challenge that I sort of threw down in front of a number of data scientists. And so when we started looking at the opioid crisis, which is why why we've set this up for colleges to look at it and apply data science. It's not about academic, theoretical. It's like, no, let's take real data science and apply it to a real problem that is happening in front of you. It's in your community, and it involves a lot of people, and they're desperately looking for ways to help reduce the number of people that are calling 911. So here's some good news. I mean, the number of people that are dying in communities is starting to level off in some communities, and it's because they've got antidotes there. You have naloxone. They've got some supervised injection sites. So some of that's starting to plateau. The bad news is the number of calls to 911 is still increasing, which means
Yes.
that you've still got kids coming down the river in the water. It isn't slowing down. It's still increasing. So all we've really done is found a way to temporarily prevent the number of people dying from increasing. But the number of people arriving in that river is still increasing, which is a scary thing, because the number of overdoses is starting to continue to increase. If we looked at the US just released a report yesterday or 2 days ago that would suggest since 2015, it's cost them over $800 billion in not just healthcare costs, but all the other collateral damage that goes along with this. There's kids that are now orphans. There's court costs. There's healthcare costs, justice costs, work costs. There's all sorts of extra additional costs that people maybe don't consider up front, but it's a really disruptive crisis, which is extremely expensive. Even today in Canada, there's one person that dies every 2 hours with this.
Wow.
We lost 4,500 people last year. That's 4,500 people in Canada, and 75% of them were addicted to opioids, starting with prescription drugs. So you just start to ask yourself, why is Canada the number 3 user of opioids behind the US and Germany? They're number 3 for the largest per capita consumption of prescription opioids. And I just wonder, how did we get here? And so there are obviously some things that you can read that would suggest, well, this is obvious. They just recently settled. There's an opioid manufacturer and 3 drug distributors down the states just in the last week that settled for $260 million in one state. They're hoping to kind of settle out of court a number of cases that are arriving. Some drug manufacturers have said, I'm out. I've declared bankruptcy. Take all the money that I have. We're out. Here's everything that I have. Take it. So you think, well, that's one way of getting this resolved. It's not resolved. You have to ask yourself, why did people arrive here in the first place? Like, how did I arrive at the doctor's office looking for an opioid prescription? And so you start to peel this back. And when you start to ask why, you're now going upriver. You're going upstream, and you're now going to start to discover a bunch of things about your community that you perhaps didn't know, but it's inadvertently a long time ago directing a certain part of your population towards an event that's causing you to look for this, that now ends up here, that if you just ignore it, ends up on the street with somebody that's just fallen down. And so that's sort of the challenge that says, we're not in a good place here. It's not over. Last year there was more people that died from opioids than guns and cars combined. That's hard to imagine. It is the equivalent of having an aircraft go down every day. And
it's crazy. Wow.
you know that if one plane went down, this has happened. One plane has a problem, and on day 2, another plane went down. They take all those planes out of the air. They ground them all. They say, well, you can't, until you get this fixed, you can't fly. Well, this is the equivalent of having an aircraft fully loaded crash every day and say, well, I wonder how tomorrow's going to work out. It's like, you're going to have the same thing. It's just going to be a disaster.
Sure.
And so you have to ask yourself, so what can we do about this? So in 2017, here's what I did. as someone that had no money, no data, and no data scientists, I said, well, let's start here. Let's ask the community, what do you think? So I created a workshop, Think Design workshop in Waterloo Region. I asked all of the different agencies in the area to come. I had 28 arrive. So that's quite remarkable. That would be like the college, and I'll bet you could do this today.
Mm-hmm.
If you work with your public health person, your CEO from the hospital, and said, we're having a Think Design workshop on this opioid crisis in November. I want you guys to come and help our students better understand this. I asked, and I had 28 agencies show up in one day. And the crazy part is, most of those agencies had never sat together in a room to discuss the crisis. They've all met independently on their own, but never in one room where everybody's looking at each other thinking, well, we're all facing the same problem. It was remarkable.
Yeah, yeah.
So from that meeting, I said, okay, there must be a way, if this is all true, everybody had a chance to provide some input. Is there a way that we could use analytics to be able to help figure some of this out? And I'm now going to take the perspective that says, I'm coming from a community that doesn't have any data scientists. I don't have any money. I don't have any data. We're in big trouble. Can big data help me? Reduce the number of people that are going to die. And so here's what I discovered. Because that's exactly where I started from. I just said, let's just assume the worst. Is it possible to use data science to help me in this particular crisis? And the answer is yes. I actually was able to find 10 data scientists to help me predict, which locations, which communities across Canada are going to get hit. I can tell you how hard they're going to get hit, how many people would die. I can also now start to tell you the three main predictors as to why those people are going to die in that community. And that's remarkable. If that were true, if I were able to share that with each community, you wouldn't have 28 agencies showing up saying, well, it's obvious, it's me. I'm the one that's got to help solve this problem. So we need more funding. It's more of an approach that says, in your community, these are the three areas that are most likely to provide assistance, because this is where the problems are coming from. Focus here first. This is the first step in saying, is there a way that we can work smarter with less funding and approach this problem? You need to understand, what is the problem? And it's not just the kids coming through the river, it's what is happening upstream. And it gives us a chance to do some preventative work that costs less earlier. This is more of a long-term solution. I'm not saying that naloxone or the supervised injection sites or some of the work that they're doing now is not important. It is. In the short term, it's what's preventing people from dying. That's a good thing. But we can start to look at using the analytics, the data that you own today, to create some knowledge that says, I can now help you predict with some accuracy how many people are going to die in which community, which gives you a chance to prioritize in your province or your territory who needs to be looked after next, because who's coming up next, and how many people are going to die and why. And if that's true, that community of 28 agencies or whatever you have within your community, and your public health person and your CEO at the hospital would help organize the paramedics, the fire, the police, all of these different organizations that are currently at the front of this, to say, look, we just want to pull over for a day and have a look at some of the analytics or the data decisions that we're able to provide some direction, and perhaps provide some focus or guidance on what areas we could maybe focus on next that doesn't require a lot of money. And so that's quite remarkable. We did all of that in less than 4 months with no money and no data. And
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Just by collaboration.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. So this is where I say, there is promise. We also know that. I'm just going to turn my camera on here so you can. There you go. There.
Here we are.
Yeah. So I think for students that are participating in this Opioid Summit ONE, it is the first Opioid Summit that's open to Canada.
Right.
We had one earlier with Mohawk College back in beginning of 2019, and it was really exciting. to see how the students went from not knowing the headlines, but learning more about the crises and then applying analytic approaches to how would you use data, and here's some data to work with,
Right.
and create some presentation boards, and then presenting those ideas not just to the people at the they call it the head program, but for everyone else that perhaps is from the community that might be part of public health, the hospitals, justice,
Sure.
education, social services. All those people could participate and provide some feedback on what and what the community can maybe do next. And so I look at this as not the end, but it's actually the beginning. And it's a conversation that can start here, but I would encourage the college to continue to be sort of the catalyst for future conversations that says, you know, what could we do next if only we had a little bit more data. And what I discovered with the meetings that we had here in the region is when we showed what was possible with even just a little bit of collaboration, suddenly additional information was made available. And we were able to start to add to the data set that says, well, I can maybe find a way to share this with you. It's de-identified, but at least they'll give you an idea of this. Right. And it's like, as soon as you start to add in a little bit more information and share with them, thank you so much for this. Here's what we've been able to discover. It's like, wait a second, I think there's maybe a way I can get you some more data.
That's right. That's right. Very much. Yeah. Well, everybody starts to talk, right? And
right.
I don't know if you've seen our Big Data Insights conference before. I don't know if you've been to it. We run it every semester, and every time we run it, we get new ideas and great people from companies talking about things the whole day. And but that's what we really require in this industry is people talking. And we've got opportunities, but it's generally one person such as yourself talking to other people, and they'll meet, they'll say that's really great, and then take off. I'd love to see some more communication, and I think that would be really beneficial. So I'm very open to helping out. So we can
perfect
sure that we can get some people on it.
We look forward to working with you and collaborating with you. There is the opioid crisis is not going away. Data analytics can play a vital role in trying to get our country organized on how to address this and working together. So the results of what you deliver on November the 15th will now be pulled together and put on a repository shared with there's 3,200 communities across Canada. Every community will now be paired with a college that held one of these events that says your city or your community is very similar to the type of community that's represented by that college. You should have a look at what they've done. Indeed. And better understand what they've done, and perhaps you could now start to use that as a starting point to kind of build out the additional or the next program, that kind of thing. So it's a great place to start. It doesn't end here. I think once people start to understand what data do they have and how could it be used to help provide a better solution for their community, they're almost obligated to help share that information, what they can, and find ways to work better together. That's the mandate. And so they'll start working on it. And I think for the college, this is a chance for people to really understand the program that you've created, the students that are there, the skills that are there, the experience that they've got, and how can they, as future ready students, how can the community embrace that and start to apply that skill to the data that they've collected so that they can create knowledge and solve complex problems, not just the opioid crisis. Other things are going to arrive that says, wow, this is really complicated. I'm not really sure how we're going to do this. It's the same approach. How do you start to use the analytics data science approach to evidence-based practices that says, well, I'm just looking at the math here and it looks like this is going to happen again. There are a couple of options we could consider. These don't cost that much and they seem to work every time this arrives. We should try this.
Right. I like this. I like this. And so I wanted to get a couple quick notes on on the timing of events and things like that. So do you have just a couple more minutes for me here?
Sure. Oh yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay, so let's see. So today is our meeting that we're
Yep.
doing, right? I'm just looking at your PDF that you sent. So, and then you have a datathon problem and data at 11.
Yep.
Okay.
So I've shared that with you in that
You did, yes.
letter, right? So
Yes.
if you see in the back, there's a link to the data sets, and
Okay.
there's a link to both a document for Canada and there's one for the States, and it's full of stuff.
Okay. 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 And this is great because well, the timing is pretty good. I'm hoping that we can get the right students organized because we do our major research projects around this time of year. We start to organize. My program in particular is a 2-semester postgraduate certificate.
Right.
So
Nice.
yeah. So we start to organize the first semesters with their projects. So you'd most likely have 4 students on this project.
Perfect.
Yeah, and there are a variety of different people. So we try to suggest sign up for something that you feel you can contribute to and that you're interested in.
Right.
So that this group of projects will be pushed out most likely next week, I believe.
Yep.
So our coordinator and program assistant right now are organizing that list. So what I'd like to do is push that into the list, and then you'll within the next week or two you'll have a full group of students. Now they will very likely want to talk to you at some point.
Sure.
So over the next couple of weeks. Now you have a deadline of the 15th, right?
So yeah, so we said, let's. I mean, it doesn't mean that everything ends on the 15th, but I'd
Yes.
like to be able to say, is there a way that we can kind of collectively
Mm-hmm.
share
Right.
presentation boards and sort of outcomes, the discoveries, and
Certainly.
sort of what would we do? Because there's interest in supporting this, and
Mm-hmm.
it's coming
Mm-hmm.
from a number of interesting places.
Mm-hmm.
You can only imagine there are a number of companies that are directly affected by this opioid crisis, and they're trying to find
Indeed.
ways to
Yes.
show evidence that they're trying to help reduce opioid deaths, and so uh, we're already looking at Opioid Summit 2,
Mm-hmm.
which would
Mm-hmm.
be in the second semester
Got it.
in like February in that time frame.
Okay. Okay.
And so it's sort of an extension of Opioid Summit 1. So one of the
Mm-hmm.
things we'll say is, this is what we've discovered. Here's the presentation boards. There's something to publish. Here's some thoughts.
Right.
Let's work collectively as a group that says,
Mm-hmm.
this is what we learned. I'd like to find a way that we could maybe do this for Opioid Summit 2.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that sort of makes it easier for, let's say your college says, you know what, I like this. There's not everybody, but there's enough students, and maybe there's some faculty in social work or
Mm-hmm.
nursing or justice or whatever,
Sure.
and there's a way to maybe use this as an opportunity to cross pollinate the
Yeah.
different faculty to work on this maybe in the second semester or not.
Mm-hmm.
And
Well, that would be the goal, right? So what they do is they get this project assigned to them, and we can provide them the data sets that you were just talking about, and we could try to or urge them to do a preliminary analysis of that and put together a board. It's the timelines are a little tight, but what they would be doing, however, is doing further analysis of that into their second semester. So
right,
their whole second semester would be spent doing much deeper work on it, and that would be the goal. So
perfect.
that's the class that I lead
Yep.
with their major research projects. So
And so
um,
with that research that you're doing and the students are doing, this is exactly what the community that you're in will be super interested in,
I think so.
as well as provincial government, who are trying to find ways. How can we reduce our costs?
Hmm.
But we need to somehow address this and do it in a way that doesn't necessarily cost more money, but enables us to address the right parts of this with the right supports. And so they're desperately looking for those types of solutions. So if there's a way that we can identify, these are the colleges that are working on this problem with a data science approach, with students that have already sort of set up I'll call it it's their major paper, but it's it's a major project for them. They're investing significant time. It's not it's a weekend thing.
That's right. That's right. This is their whole semester, and plus the little bit of the first semester for sure.
These are the people you want to hire when they're done, when they're finished their education. Like, get that person's name, find them, and hire them.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. Well, that's the goal, right? We have a lot of companies who will say, okay, we need either one person or a group of people, and so that's sort of the pitch that we give to the students is focus on it, make it look like you are, imagine that you are working for this company right now. You may not be getting paid, but you're getting very good experience working with a real company. And now would they have,
true.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. So now would they have access to you, Dana?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Because I think that would be really valuable. I mean, I would love for them to hear your talk one more time there again, because that would get them very, very engaged.
Well, I've recorded this session here. And I can send you a link to that one or post it on the website. And I'm happy to maybe they review that one first, and then if you want, we can set up a sort of a conference call that says maybe you get some other questions, and we can go through some other things to help provide focus or direction. And happy to do that.
Yeah, because there's an opportunity. So now, as I mentioned, we roll out our projects next week sometime. And what I may do, Gord was supposed to come on the meeting, so he's the interim project or program coordinator. So what he will do is he teaches that first semester course that rolls out the projects. So what I may do is if there's an opportunity to do a 10 or 15 minute, just like you did, you just present it to those classes. There's two classes, and you could just present it to that class, and then that would be the pitch, if you will, that would say, hey, I want to do this project.
Right.
So in that class, there's 90 people roughly.
Nice.
So there's a great opportunity.
That's awesome.
Right? So it's a really great opportunity to show everybody what you're doing, and I think it would be amazing. You are in Canada, right?
I'm in Waterloo, Ontario.
Oh, okay. Well, gosh, I mean, it would be amazing if you could come up to meet people, because we would certainly could certainly do set up a theater to have a better conversation. So probably for an hour or something like that, we could bring the whole student body for big data, and have them come. It may be short notice for you, but we could be sometime next week or 2 weeks from now.
Okay. Well, I know that I have a day job as well.
Yes,
so
of course.
They kind of goes from 8 until who knows when you go to bed. But
of course.
So I'm in Canada next week. The week after I'm in the UK. Then I'm home for a week. Then I'm which is November 15th, and on the 15th that night I'm off to Australia.
Well, we could do. I think we could do this presentation equally well. We could set it up on a screen, and it's possible that we could present it to the classes, as I mentioned, and Gord could arrange the appropriate space to do that.
If I could do it in person, I'd love to do that, because it's like it's so much more engaging. And I know
totally
that
you had pitched it so well. So
you give me 90 students, it's like half the class is going to say, I want to do this by the time.
Yes, I'm sure you got me excited. I think that would be the key, because I'm just thinking about the time factor for you to make sure that we've got enough sense of
Yeah.
time and the expediency so that they are this project already has some preliminary data to work with, which is
Yeah.
always a stumble block for us to get something to work
Yeah.
with to start, but they can get a sense of what else they need to do. And if you're
Yeah.
giving them some mentorship on where the data comes from and where it can
Yeah.
go and
Yeah.
all the rest of the steps, that's exactly the partner what we want right now. So
Okay. So let me know what days or what time blocks
yep,
or
you bet,
would
you
work
bet.
best, and we can either I don't know if I'd love to be there in person, and if there's a way
Sure.
I can get that figured out, I will try. But if
Indeed.
it's not, if it's some really small time somewhere in the middle, and
Yes.
it's kind of like I can't drive that fast. So
Well, either way, I mean, we can do a long a long day if you want. We can take lots of time, make it worth your while. But I would be very interested in getting the students excited about your project. So, and
yeah,
it's the perfect time. We're on that cusp of shutting down the list, but I know that I can push one more in, and especially with this one would be
yeah.
perfect.
Okay.
Perfect. Okay.
Well, I've done similar type of work with Mohawk College. In fact, I sit on their advisory board now
Wonderful.
for their data analytics
Hmm.
program, and
We'll have to get you on ours then.
yeah. So
Yeah.
exactly. So it's not like I'm as the Institute for Smarter Government is a nonprofit organization.
Yes.
My main role here isn't to actually do the work. It's more
Hmm.
about making it
Sharing
easier for
information and
yeah, and
yeah.
making sure people
Mhm.
understand it's possible, and there are data scientists that are available. You just need to find them here. Let me
Yes.
get you started, and it's like make
Yes.
the connection, and then once you start working together, it's like okay, you're on your own here.
Indeed.
Run.
Yep. Very much. Yeah. And that's kind of why our little project, our system that we use for our major research project works, because we work with startups, we work with mid-range large companies, and of course nonprofits. So it's you still get the manpower, but you don't have to go through the funding
Right.
process and wait 6 months before you get some answer back.
Right. Yeah.
I'm sure
Yeah.
you're familiar with the funding, but
I am.
we work with the Research and Innovation Center very closely here in my program. So we have an excellent relationship there.
Awesome.
Yeah, so
Whereabouts is the campus for the data analytics? Or
in
which
Barrie,
okay.
yeah.
Are you outside of Barrie, or is it just it's all in Barrie?
Well, our program is run out of the Barrie campus, but
Okay.
we have six campuses total
Yeah.
for Georgian College. Yeah.
Because they kind of go all the way up to Owen Sound, I think.
Oh, Owen Sound, Aurelia, downtown
Yeah,
Barrie, Midland.
yeah.
There's a couple other ones that I've forgotten where they are, but yeah.
That's crazy. You've got that many kids enrolled in that program. That's awesome.
We are a really active program for big data analytics, and it's a we've put a lot of effort into developing it. We
Yeah,
have our struggles just like anyone else, but
yeah.
we have almost 90% international involvement as well. So there are students coming from all around the world. So
Awesome.
yeah,
Well,
yeah.
I
So
think the colleges uh, deserve some spotlight on this particular area
I
because
think so.
it's up,
I think so.
it's finding ways to apply data science, and
Yes.
it is a green field.
Yes, it is. Yeah. Yeah, it's ready. It's ready. Because we get a lot of conversations with the city about this exact thing because they have um, what is the safe use or safe consumption sites in the city,
Yep, yep,
and they're constantly overrun, they're understaffed, and we had one
yep.
one fella that really nice guy, but just not enough professional power, if you will, but he's got a lot of connections. So I think
Right.
not enough people were taking him seriously.
Mm.
This is the kind of representation I think it needs.
Well, I'm excited for you. I think you're driving an awesome program there. And if there's a way that if you like, I offer
Sure.
my advice or my knowledge on your advisory board, if that will help. And because not every college is going to embrace or has the capacity to embrace it. But for those that have started the journey and are ready to actually start, putting experienced, future ready students into this space, it's like, okay, we need to find them, and you need to find a way to give those students a job so that they can make
Yes.
good money and tell all their friends, you know what, data science is really cool and it's a good
Yeah.
living.
Yes, it
You should
is.
do
Yeah.
this.
That's the way to
Yeah.
be.
Yeah.
I think
And
so.
yeah, well, I think it's a pioneering space, but it is the future.
Yes, it
And
is.
that pivotal moment where people start to see what's possible and then look in their inside and go, we're not staffed for this. I
That's
don't
right.
even know where to find them. How do you
Mhm.
describe them? And it's like, you're in trouble. You
You
should have
are,
had
yeah,
this.
yeah, yeah,
You should have had this done a long
yeah,
time ago. So,
yeah, yeah.
um, so that's where you play a big role in getting this all
Indeed we do.
organized.
Indeed we do. Well, I
Yeah.
like it. I like it, Dana. I'm excited. During the day today, I'll try to talk to Gord, and if you don't mind,
Yep.
I'll put him in touch with you.
Yep.
You may have to do a little
Sure.
secondary presentation.
Okay.
I was hoping that he would be on this one, but I guess he's busy. So um,
Yep.
I'm running late for my next meeting anyhow, but so they can wait.
Perfect.
But
I'll
they
send you the link. You let me
Yes,
know what dates are good for Gord,
great.
and put me down as a name for your advisory board or
You
whenever
bet.
you're
You
sort of,
bet.
because
We've
these are
got
the kind of conversations we're having at Mohawk as well.
exactly. We've got some really good things coming up. So we've got our conference coming up on November 29th, and our board of advisors, our PAC meeting, that is on I want to say the 25th of November.
Okay.
So I'll put your name in with Cheryl McWilliams. She's our department assistant or administrator, and
Yeah.
she will very likely get back to you fairly soon. And
Perfect.
I think it'd be great to have you on board.
Excellent.
Wonderful, Dana.
Okay. Well, we'll talk soon. I look forward to hearing from Gord.
Yes, absolutely. Fantastic. Thanks
All right.
thanks a bunch, and have a great day, Dana.
All righty. Thanks again. We'll
Okay,
talk soon. Bye
bye bye.
bye.